Well, thanks very much for that. I've been coming to these things for quite a while, and I have noticed that it's very encouraging to see how much inequalities is now on the agenda everywhere I go. But the thing that slightly worries me is that we're hearing, we're documenting, we know, and everything's happening at a European level. The solutions are at a national level. What I hear all the time is that it comes down to there is both a lack of political will, and that every time you convince a government, then a new government comes in, and then you start convincing them again, and a new government comes in by the time. And there is a complete lack of accountability, national accountability. I slightly worry that cancer, the problem we have is a health system inequality, I think. It's not a cancer inequality. And I think there's a danger, maybe, and I wondered what people thought. Is this really something that ECPC needs to fight as a cancer thing? Or is there a problem that governments are not answerable to their populations for what they're doing in health? And that unless at a national level ECPC can link up with other people and address that, then we'll be hearing these fantastic stats and we'll be understanding and talking and saying action is now. Can't be done at European level. What's going to happen at a national level? Because it is a political problem. And groups like ECPC, patient groups, have got to make their parliaments, their national governments, answerable. And it's not going to happen with the stats and the whole academic approach. It's going to happen, it's politics. And it's uniting with other people who are also being let down by their health system. And I wonder whether that is something that needs to be on the agenda if we're going to actually change things on the ground.
Thank you very much. And I'll ask maybe Richard to comment first, then Francesco, and then myself.
I'm going to violently agree with everything you've said there. Let me make, first of all, about the business about you're spot on. I think the thing about cancer, and it's interesting, is two things to say. Firstly, the data in cancer in inequalities and outcomes is very strong. So it's a good exemplar, compared to many other diseases, of an inequalities in a healthcare system. And it's very robust, and we can approach it from many different angles, as we talked about. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I agree, this is, you can argue, it's a Trojan horse for the healthcare system generally. So cancer is a very politically powerful disease, globally speaking. And it's something that I think we're not very mindful of, which is utilizing the cancer story, if you like, and the cancer inequalities to generally improve healthcare outcomes. Our patients don't come to us just with cancer. They come with renal problems, cardiovascular, dementia. These are the comorbidities of an aging Europe. So the reality for us as clinicians is we see patients with everything under the sun. And it isn't, and you're spot on about simply saying cancer, 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 not everybody else. This is about getting member states and parliaments to be held accountable. But I would argue that I think cancer has a unique political and data position in the fight for healthcare inequalities.
Francesco, would you like to comment?
Yeah, let me tell you some example of what we are trying to do to reach the member state. That is the most important thing, and is even more difficult to reach the single regions, because as you know, there are a lot of inequalities between countries, like in Italy, between north and south part of Italy. So what we are trying to do, first of all, we are trying to interact, to discuss with the medical oncologist organization, because in the moment the patient has to face a new reality, the medical oncologist is the one that gives information. Yesterday we had a meeting with the CEO of the guidelines, and we were pushing to get in guidelines the late effects of for cured people. And then we were asking to make a kind of survivorship cancer plan to empower patients and to give also to general practitioner information, to grow the culture about taking care of survivorship. We are working with the European Commission, and once we were illustrating the Bill of Rights, the Commission came and said, you, ECPC, will be inside of the expert in the European Commission. And we are now in the Commission of Experts, and there we are fighting not only to build good document, and I can tell you it's a very good document, the one that is trying to give guidelines for national cancer plan, because I think that the national cancer plan are the starting point, because it meets together needs of patients and politicians and so on. And now we have these guidelines, but we were telling just in Luxembourg 2 weeks ago to the commissioner, look, we patients don't want to have a document to bring in the drawer. You have to call the public health minister and tell if they agree on the work that has been done all together, but not just for making theory, but just to transfer this. And we were quite enthusiastic that the new commissioner, for the first time having a bigger political responsibility, was telling that now it's time to change the treats and to give more attention to the public health. The other thing that we are doing in this direction is we are fighting for the cross-border health care. That, according to us, is the starting point, specifically for rare disease, because the healthcare cross-border directive gives more room to the rare disease. And now we are working to try to apply, because this directive is not functioning. This is the other very bad situation, and that could be really a fil rouge for getting all the countries to work together. Now we are trying to push to have a kind of compensation fund for rare disease in the cross-border healthcare to allow to use, at least from rare cancer, rare disease, this cross-border. This is what we are trying to do, and we are helping. We went in Romania, and we had just a press conference, and we were talking with people there, with maps, asking to do something for radiotherapy, because we know that 75% of people that could be cured by radiotherapy have no access to radiotherapy. We are fighting. We hope, but we need to have a partnership, and now we feel stronger that we are going to write a position paper on inequalities, just starting from the agreement of 19 European countries. And I think that is a very good starting point to get more involved with the state member.
And I'll just add very briefly to that, just to say I agree with you entirely. And I think the capacity of both patient groups like ECPC, organizations like the European Cancer Leagues that link into national cancer groups is the way to do it. So you put the pressure at the European level, but you also need to put the pressure at the national level, and that is political pressure that needs to be done. Healthcare needs to be made an issue in elections, like for example it was done in the recent election in the UK, and that type of thing. I would agree with Richard that I think cancer can be a stalking horse, if you like, to drive that whole health inequalities agenda going forward. But thank you for your question. Are there any other questions or comments?
Good morning. My name is Natacha Bolaños. I come from Spain, from the Spanish Group for Cancer Patients. We collaborate regularly with the ECPC in all your projects. First of all, thank you for such an extraordinary presentation and study about inequalities. Spain is a very good example about inequalities across the country. We have 17 different health systems inside our country. So you will find from the best cancer care to the worst cancer care, no matter where you go. And from the Spanish Group for Cancer Patients, we push a lot our politics to give us specific answers on the strategy for cancer on the next year. But our periods of government are just 4 years, so it's impossible to make them possible. And for example, we organize every year a national congress for cancer patients, and this year, for the first time, we are inviting all the politics, all the groups, to go there just to listen what are our questions, what patients demand, and because we will be very close to the moment of the elections, we think that could be a good way to really push them to move forward, because of course they want people to follow their initiatives. But really, we don't know what else we can do, but push. We can make it evidence. We can raise a voice. We, in fact, act as a national voice, as just one voice, as ECPC acts for Europe. So my question is how we patient groups, how society, how the media, how we can help policymakers to really take care about the inequalities.
Okay, I'll maybe start on that and then I'll pass over to my colleagues. I think the first thing is awareness and education. And I think, as Francesco said, I mean, one of the issues is, despite us thinking that everybody knows the information, knows the data, knows the inequalities, when you actually talk to the politicians, that is not the case. It is not high on their agenda. Our job, and that's all of us, the collective we, is to get it up there on the agenda, but also to provide that information. And the other thing is, we need to be able to drill down into the data, like Richard very eloquently did in 2013 in his Lancet Oncology paper, and show what the situation is in each individual country. So we need to be holding the politicians to actually see, this is what's happening in your country. Are you responsible for that? Are you going to do something about it? The situation in Romania, for example, where 30 essential medicines, I'm not talking about innovative medicines, I'm talking about essential medicines not available to cancer patients. Cancer patients had to come up with a solution and actually set up a situation where actually people were bought medicines for them, a lot actually here in Vienna, and brought those medicines into the country because the national government didn't have the cojones to actually do something about it. So we need to push the governments on the spot to actually deliver on better health for patients.
Thank you.
I don't know if any of you want to add to that.
The way of influencing political systems, organisations, a lot of work has been done in this area. So the whole evidence to policy movement, you've got a lot of the evidence. Even if it's not available, often you know what that evidence is. I mean, Spain, you're spotting the regional differences are absolutely shocking. I would suspect a lot of Spanish people do not really understand those regional differences. And then the way the evidence is presented, there are so many different tools now, the infographics, the use of social media, but it needs to be coupled to the political connections. So we kind of often fail to put together the politics with, if you like, the right messaging in the right way. And I don't think there's any substitute for getting people in to help you who really know how to do this. Yeah. I mean, there are lots and lots of groups and individuals who really have expertise in taking evidence and turning it into political action, who work off in different areas, whether it's environmental movements or whatever. And you can really learn an awful lot from that. And we've often seen collaborations between policy experts and political movements in the environmental movement, for instance, with cancer, because they're really, really good at taking evidence and getting political action. So all of this is out there, but you need campaigns as well. You can't just do one thing. You have to be prepared to do 3, 5, 7 years. It's a big thing. Yeah.
I'll give you an example at local level. So an issue in Northern Ireland where I live is in relation to access to cancer medicines. So what we did, we partnered with a national newspaper and developed a campaign that involved, over a period of time, getting 24 to 28,000 signatures, mostly online, some in postcards. We then delivered them on the steps of our Parliament in Stormont to the Minister for Health. And that actually did have an effect. We partnered with a local organisation, Cancer Focus Northern Ireland, who took the second article of the European Cancer Patient Bill of Rights in relation to access. They took that, put it into their actual agenda, and did that. And the government minister then organised a review, and there last week his replacement just announced funding to actually drive that. So it is possible to work at national level in partnership, and I think that's the key thing. And I agree with you in that situation. We also partnered with both a national newspaper, but also with a media advisor in relation to messaging, because messaging is critical in that context. And if you can do that, so that just shows you one example at local level. What we would like to see is 100 examples at local level of similar things and pushing that agenda all the time.
Let me tell the last thing. Our mission is also to have the capacity building of patient organizations, because they differ a lot between countries and countries. And in some countries, they are very weak. What we are trying to suggest them to make partnership, to make alliance. And in Italy, we are very strong because we made a kind of a table in which all the stakeholders every year make just the point of how is going the cancer care in Italy. And our strongest point was that we made, since the beginning, a very strong alliance with the Italian medical oncologists, so to be supported and to be reliable. But what we have been doing from a political point of view, because there is shocking difference between Calabria and Lombardia. So what we have been now doing, there is a change of our constitution, because now public health service is not one public health service, but it's 20 different regional. And in the constitution, we have been fighting, we as cancer patient organization, getting all the patient organization from all diseases. And we were pushing the parliament, and we got at least something that was approved by the parliament, that the rights for health are together with the social rights, and so then the Italian government will get much more power to go and check what regions are doing. So we are moving, but then if you go in Romania or if you go in Bulgaria, they are lower. So what we need also to have alliance in Europe to get capacity building of those organizations to fight in their member state.
Nobody else wants to talk, I will have a second comment. I totally agree with you. And I have an example. We try to invest as much resources as we can to raise awareness about those inequalities across the country. And we have published a campaign that has more than a year. And the message is, check very well the postal code where you live, because it will influence what cancer treatment you will be offered. And we think that is a strong message. But when we are becoming professionals of lobby with politics, but when we push politicians and policymakers in our country to talk about this, at the end, we are talking about price. And essential medicines are not expensive, but they want to bring that talk about price, about how much it costs, about industry, about this. But who is investing in research at the end? Who is the one who is behind all this fight? So I think, of course, Lorenzo, that we need to fight together, and we try to collaborate as much as we can. But I think this needs to go to another level. When you study the gross product in Spain, what is invested in healthcare in general, I don't want to talk about cancer area because it's really low. We discovered that it's just 6%. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, one, you're very right. We called it a postcode lottery in Northern Ireland and used that as the driving thing, as one of the messaging things that we used in the campaign. But you're very right, and it echoes back what Richard was talking to and the question that Anna asked. It's how we actually influence health systems. And I think we just need to push, and there is an important way in which we need to ally with together. And I think if we work together, we can achieve a lot more, and that includes the media. The media have a responsibility as well to work with us to actually look at trying to develop those clear messages and actually look at taking the facts but then using them to actually drive an agenda that actually at the center of that is actually changing outcomes for cancer patients.
Hello, I'm from Romania. You talk a lot about Romania as a bad example. And you are right about access to radiotherapy and essential medicines. And we, from the media, because I'm from the media, we write about these things. But nothing happens, or it happens in a very slow rhythm. So how can we push more? Do the patients' associations need to do more, need to be more united so that the authorities can do something? They say that they don't have the money to invest more in health. And recently, the patients' associations launched a campaign in which they ask for 6% for health. And they ask this for many, many years, but nothing happens. So what are your recommendations for Romania? Because you talk a lot about Romania as a bad example.
Okay, I'll let Richard maybe take that first, and then Francesco.
Oh boy.
I'm really sorry that no one from Romania,
I'm
it's a
gonna say
physician,
something
is
maybe
here.
that's slightly controversial. I think there's a real failure with the way that the Council of Ministers in Europe actually operates on the health scene. There's a failure on a number of levels. The most significant one is no one holds each other to account. We're supposed to be part of Europe, or the European Union, yet we seem completely unable to criticise each other in a constructive way about what we are or not doing right in areas, particularly where the budgets are being invested. And I think it's very schizophrenic actually. On the one hand, we want to have the European Union. On the other hand, we're all very tightly provincial and parochial about our own countries. And the reality is, you know, within Romania, I would argue that some of your healthcare professionals are not vocal enough about the issues of funding, because I don't think it's in some interest of certain parties to put their heads above the parapet. So I think the first thing within Romania is getting everybody saying the same thing. That's patient organisations, senior doctors and leaders, and many of your senior doctors and leaders have not said this in a public forum, that the country is spending too little. But then there is a question about the Council of Ministers holding other EU countries to account for their expenditures. Why are you spending X in that area when you're not spending enough in healthcare? And I appreciate fiscal problems and constraints and the need to create sustainable systems and building things up. And there's just a reality of very different incomes and GNIs. But we have a real problem with discussing this in an open way, and we have problems within countries of interest groups that don't want to see things change.
So what we are hoping that might have some effect is the European Partnership Against Cancer, and then the cancer control that is under the Commission. They are coordinating all these things. So we were pushing because we feel that from European Parliament we can have more attention. And we have a very good relationship with the Romanian MEPs. And we in the Parliament were just discussing several times. They know, and I think because I was in Romania, they are talking also politically correct from this point of view. But I trust very much that we can get something done by this project of the Commission. 19 countries involved, and Romania is present and is collaborating with us. But the most important thing is now to step down from the Europe to each member state, and this is now the second war we have to fight and try to win.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah, okay.
Good morning. My name is Marjo Hahka-Kemppinen, and I'm a medical oncologist, but I'm working for Eli Lilly. I'm a medical director for Oncology Europe. First, I need to congratulate you for the work what you have been doing. I think it's very impressive what ECPC has achieved. But one thing that has bothered me, I have been in this role for over a year, and I'm still practicing. I have over 25 years of an experience. When I'm looking at myself at the mirror and around, where are the physicians? Where are really the oncologists treating these patients? We have individuals like in here, but why are we only going behind the science and I only treat the patient, I don't want to take the stand? And I see a huge gap in there, and I wonder, what could we do? Is there something what we could do?
I think one, it gets back to the education situation, but it also gets back to what Richard encountered. I think you need to stand up above the parapet sometimes and actually say something and mean it and want to do something. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're actually saying this needs to change, and we're not alone. There's many people doing this, but there aren't enough of us doing this, I would say. And I think that is important. And again, if everybody's working together, giving the same message, not being disjointed, but actually working together, and that's the whole principle of where we're coming from in relation to partnerships between patient groups, advocacy groups, healthcare professionals. Also, the industry has a role to play. So, it is important that we have common messages. I think some of the times our messages get disjointed. And I don't think that's helpful, to be perfectly honest. So I think common messages, and that's how sometimes the European framework can help in that way. But then, as we've all indicated, and as I said at the very start of the questions, that needs to drill down individually at national level to help us.
You've also, I think, I'll make a point. A lot of my colleagues have no real concept or understanding of this particular thing we're discussing because it's a different language, it's a two-culture problem. Yeah. This is about demography, transitional societies, political economy. It's a completely different world, completely different language. It's actually quite intelligible once you listen to it. It's not like, I was going to say, look at Mark here, understanding the transcriptome or the epi. That's actually really hard to penetrate. The other way is much easier. So we can't assume that senior leaders in science, in cancer science and cancer clinical world often understand this area. So Mark's spot on. That we need to educate that lot and bring them on board and then say, right, you need to stand up and advocate for this as well.
Joan?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Richard. Just for that, and ECPC, very, very interesting and being very, very worthwhile. My name is Joan Kelly. I'm President of ECC and European Cancer Weeks. And I also work in Ireland in the Irish Cancer Society. I worked in the cancer charity for the last 20 years and have an oncology nursing background. In our organisation, just on a country scale, we are a national charity. We're lucky to be a national charity. We're a pretty big charity for cancer. But we have a head of advocacy. And really, despite that, we still have, and we're constantly out there and at the gate of Parliament on a regular basis. And we need to be doing that, and we should be, and we will continue to do that more and more. So that's one way of getting things done. But at the same time, I had a conversation with an oncology nurse here from a part of Ireland, and she wanted to send a letter to her minister, our Minister for Health, but her director of nursing wouldn't let her send it. She wasn't asking her to co-sign it. She wasn't. She wouldn't let her send it.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for clinicians to speak out, and I know you've said it here, but it's really important that they should. And I think we have to find a way where clinicians can speak out, maybe with evidence, rather than just berating the
I think that's yeah. I absolutely agree with you, Joan. That that is the thing. It's if it's the way you do it, and certainly staying with evidence, and also providing solutions, because that's the other thing. The amount of sort of freedom of information requests the Minister for Health gets, the amount of complaints the Minister of Health gets. But if it's actually saying, here's the problem, here's the evidence, and here we would like to work with you to develop a potential solution. And I know the Irish Cancer Society has done that on a number of different very good initiatives in that regard.
I really think also for a conference like this at ECHO, and I know that there will be changes in terms of ECHO, ESMO, both of those, there's really important clinical leaders here at this conference, but they're not here at this meeting. We need to have sessions to talk to those clinical leaders about how to do this job and to draw attention to the disparities.
Yeah.
Because we have them in Ireland. There's two suburbs of Dublin, one beside the other, and the difference in cancer deaths is almost
phenomenal. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I would suggest, for for the next meeting in 2017, I would suggest that the Oncopolicy Forum needs to have more teeth and more meat and more controversial subjects brought up and talked about, because I would feel that's the important. There is a forum here that you can actually use to develop these things, but it needs to be setting. What's the reality in terms of where we are now, and what are the solutions, and maybe be slightly more controversial than it's been at this particular one. And that's where you get the leaders in the room and actually trying to get them to debate particular solutions.
Hello. I am Katia Apostolidis. I am the Vice President of ECPC, and I am Greek. This tells the story of the healthcare system that has been running for 5 years in the press. We have a very acute problem in Greece because there are imposition of cost reduction horizontal. So this leads to many health inequalities which linked to employment legislation that has been abolished during the 5 years of the austerity measures, has led to an army of unemployed and uninsured. And this is not only a Greek problem. Same happens in Spain, as colleagues say, and the same happens in Portugal, and I don't know where else. So we have, on one hand, people who are employed, still employed and insured, but do not have access or very reduced access because there are missing medicines, difficulty to get access to cancer care. And on the other hand, we have those who have nothing. For me, this is a purely political decision, and this stems from the fact that health ministers do not build their own budget and do not discuss their own budget within the Commission, but they submit their budget to the ECOFIN. That is, the economy ministers decide on health care. So this is a highly political issue, and I believe that the work we are doing in ECPC in bringing the problem up to the European level maybe will bring some results on the political level so that health ministers can discuss health issues in Europe on their own right and not having their budgets decided by ministers who have other responsibilities. So this is in relation to what we talked before, and I don't see any immediate solutions, but we have to persevere, and my suggestion would be to colleagues and our members, take the press release, translate it in your own language, take the Europe of Disparities paper, which we hope to be able to translate soon, and make an appointment with your health minister. Insist to get any appointment. Don't go one cancer patient organization. Talk to your colleagues and go all together if you do not have a federation. And make your point very clear that you will bring the problems up to the European level. ECPC is here to help you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Excellent.
It's already too many ECPC today, but what can we do? We worked a lot on this paper. So just wanted to sort of wrap up that we know it's a difficult, and as Richard said, it takes years to bring a change. But that's why, to the people in the room, we would like to say that when we conceived this, we did it with Estro, we did it thanks to hospital pharmacists. We also thought about politicians, that is difficult to engage, and that's why with Mark, we even thought when we put together all these statistics about the countries where you can get champions per each country, so that they identify with the problems in the paper and they voice the problems further on in the parliament or at national level. Furthermore, it's for the first time, that's why we are so excited about this, because it has a coherence, and we worked a lot about it to be a long-term plan. The Europe of Disparities is not just a paper. It's a tool of empowerment of our member organizations, and it will also translate into the strategy of ECPC for the next years. All you see in the paper, each policy recommendation in the next year and in the next years, it will translate into actions of ECPC, because we believe that it's no longer time to just, as it was said here today, just to identify things, just to find statistics, but translate this into action. And that's why you will see for the next year to come, each policy recommendation in the paper will be followed by a solution, an action taken by an ECPC for its strategy on long term. So that's all I wanted to say. And we were happy to have such a good collaboration and the main stakeholders involved into this paper, because it's not just a one-time event, it's a long-term strategy. And it's meant to, it's a tool for our member organizations.
Thanks, Mihaela, because we are very proud of our office. They put a lot of passion in what they are doing, and this Europe of Disparities document has been around for 4 or 5 months, and finally we succeeded to do this press conference with our best friends. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.